Kenya sat at her sleek oak desk, staring at the stack of case files she would have to review later. The sun filtered through the blinds, painting stripes of light across the office floor. Her mind was running 1,000 miles per hour, and exhaustion weighed on her like a heavy coat. The door swung open. Her twin sister, Keisha, stepped in. The first thing Kenya noticed wasn't the tired slump of her shoulders, but the dark bruises shadowing her cheeks. "Keisha, what happened?" Kenya whispered, rising from her chair. Keisha didn't answer immediately. She lowered her sunglasses, revealing red, tear-filled eyes. She sank into the chair across from Kenya, rocking slightly, her hands fidgeting. I can't live like this anymore," she said, her voice trembling. Marcus, he's been controlling me, hurting me, and I don't know how to stop it." Kenya's chest tightened. Her sister, her twin, had endured abuse for years. How had she hidden it so well? "Tell me everything," Kenya said, gripping Keisha's hands. "I need to know exactly what's been happening." Keisha's words tumbled out, the controlling behavior, the threats, the isolation from friends and family, the physical abuse. Kenya listened, every word hitting her like a punch. Kenya took a deep breath. She was a criminal defense attorney, but this was personal. "We need a plan," Kenya said firmly. "A law is on our side, but we have to be smart. We can't let him get away with this." Keisha nodded weakly, relief washing over her face. "I don't know if I can do it," she whispered. "I've been scared for so long." "I will do it," Kenya replied, determination lighting her eyes. "For you, for your safety, I'll protect you." The rest of the day was spent preparing. Kenya researched legal precedents, read about psychological manipulation, and plotted the first steps of her plan. She would have to take Keisha's place for a few days, acting as her twin to confront Marcus safely and gather evidence. "This won't be easy," Kenya muttered to herself, pacing the room, "but it has to be done." She examined Keisha's wardrobe, practiced walking in her shoes, even mimicked her voice and gestures. Every detail mattered. As night fell, Kenya sat in the quiet office, staring at the city lights outside the window. Tomorrow, everything would change. She would step into her sister's world, face Marcus, and finally give Keisha the freedom she deserved. "No one hurts my sister and gets away with it. Not on my watch." The next morning, Kenya woke early, her heart pounding. Today, she would step into Keisha's world and face Marcus. Every detail mattered, the way Keisha walked, the way she spoke, even the nervous habit of twisting her bracelet. Kenya rehearsed in front of the mirror, perfecting every nuance. She arrived at Marcus's apartment, a tall building with mirrored windows reflecting the bustling city below. Her stomach churned, but she kept her composure. She rang the doorbell, her mind rehearsing possible scenarios, her eyes scanning the street for witnesses. The door opened. Marcus stood there, towering and menacing, a smug grin on his face. "Keisha," he drawled, his tone dripping with false charm. "Hi," Kenya said, mimicking Keisha's soft voice, hiding the tension in her shoulders. "I wanted to talk." Marcus stepped aside, letting her in. The apartment smelled of alcohol and expensive cologne. Kenya's pulse raced as she followed him into the living room. Every step was calculated, every word measured. "You've been distant," Marcus said, leaning against the counter, eyes narrowing. "Is there someone else?" Kenya shook her head, keeping her voice gentle. "No, I feel like we need to communicate better." He laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Communication? You've always been so weak, always afraid." Kenya's hands trembled slightly, but she masked it with a calm smile. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said, her voice steady. "I'm ready to be honest, with you and with myself." Marcus's eyes flickered with suspicion. "What are you talking about?" "The truth," Kenya replied, stepping closer. "The lies, the control, the way you've treated me." Marcus laughed again, louder this time. "You're trying to play games, Keisha. Don't forget who's in charge here." Kenya's heart pounded, but she held her ground. "Not anymore. I won't let fear control me." At that moment, she pulled out her phone, discreetly recording the conversation. Every threat, every abusive word would be documented. Marcus's smirk faltered. "What is that?" he demanded. "Evidence," Kenya said calmly. "The law won't ignore this, and neither will I." Marcus's face twisted in rage. He lunged forward, but Kenya stepped back, keeping her distance. Her mind raced. This was her sister's life she was protecting, and she wouldn't fail. "You can't threaten me anymore," she said firmly, "and you can't hurt Keisha anymore." Marcus snarled, but realized the confrontation wasn't going in his favor. Kenya's determination, her preparation, and her fearless stance threw him off balance. "This isn't over," he growled, slamming the couch in frustration. "It is over," Kenya said quietly, turning to leave. She walked out of the apartment with her head held high, knowing the first step had been taken. Keisha's freedom had begun. Outside, the sunlight felt warmer, brighter. Kenya took a deep breath. Relief mingled with the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She had confronted Marcus, documented his behavior, and taken the first step toward justice. "One step at a time," she whispered. "We're not done yet, but we've started." After leaving Marcus's apartment, Kenya didn't go home. Instead, she found a quiet cafe nearby, a small sanctuary where she could think clearly. Her mind raced, replaying every word, every threat. She knew this confrontation was only the beginning. Kenya opened her laptop and transferred the recordings from her phone. Each word Marcus had spoken, every intimidation tactic, was now safely stored. She labeled each file carefully: threats, manipulation, abuse. Each label felt like a small victory. She took out a notebook and started drafting a plan. She wrote down every step: protect Keisha, document Marcus's actions, gather witnesses, notify authorities if needed, ensure Keisha's safety and emotional support. Kenya paused, sipping her coffee. This was bigger than just confrontation. It was about creating a safety net strong enough to hold her sister in case Marcus escalated further. Her mind flashed to Keisha, alone and scared. Kenya imagined her sister sitting in the apartment, the fear in her eyes, the trembling hands. That image steeled her resolve. She wouldn't let Marcus win. Kenya decided she needed more than just evidence. She needed allies. She reached out to a trusted friend, someone experienced in legal matters. Carefully, she explained the situation, sharing the recordings and details without revealing her location. "We'll build a strong case," the friend said over the encrypted call. "If Marcus crosses the line again, he won't get away." The plan began to take shape. Kenya would meet Keisha that evening. Together, they would document every interaction, every message, every suspicious activity. Marcus's web of control would be dismantled step by step. Even as she worked, Kenya remained aware of her surroundings. The cafe was quiet, but she noticed a man in a dark jacket glancing her way more than once. Instinctively, she moved to a table near the window, positioning herself so she could leave quickly if necessary. Her phone buzzed. It was Keisha. "Kenya, I'm scared. He called again." Kenya's heart sank, but she maintained a calm voice. "I know, Keisha. Stay calm. Don't answer him. I'm coming." She packed her laptop, notebook, and the recordings, leaving the cafe with quiet determination. Every step felt like a step toward freedom, a step toward justice. On the way, Kenya rehearsed her words for Keisha. She wanted her sister to feel safe, to feel that someone was truly in control of protecting her. This wasn't just about confrontation, it was about empowerment. By the time she arrived at Keisha's apartment, dusk was falling, shadows stretched across the walls, but Kenya's presence brought light. Keisha opened the door, tears in her eyes, relief washing over her face. "I'm here," Kenya said softly. "You're not alone anymore." Together, they reviewed the recordings, messages, and threats. Every detail was cataloged meticulously. Marcus's threats were no longer invisible shadows. They were tangible evidence, ready to be used if necessary. "We'll make him accountable," Kenya whispered, gripping her sister's hand. "Step by step, we'll take back control." Outside, the city lights flickered on, but inside, a different light shone: determination, courage, and the first taste of victory. Kenya and Keisha spent the evening preparing. Every detail of Marcus's behavior, every message, every intimidating call was cataloged and saved. Kenya reminded Keisha to stay calm and not engage if Marcus tried to reach her. As night fell, Kenya suggested a controlled approach, meeting Marcus at a neutral place where Keisha would be safe and having evidence ready to deter any threats. The following morning, they drove to a small, semi-public location, a cafe where surveillance cameras were visible. Marcus had no idea they were prepared. When Marcus arrived, his confident demeanor faltered slightly. He saw Kenya's determined face and Keisha standing close by. He tried to maintain control, flashing a smile, but there was hesitation in his eyes. "Keisha, I just wanted to talk," he began, his voice trying to sound casual. Kenya stepped forward calmly, holding a folder with screenshots and recordings of every abusive interaction. "Talking is fine, Marcus," Kenya said firmly, "but we're not here for games. Every threat, every manipulation, it's documented." Marcus's smile vanished. He tried to reach into his pocket, perhaps for his phone, perhaps for intimidation, but Kenya was ready. She moved slightly to Keisha's side, protective and assertive. Keisha, for the first time, felt empowered. She didn't flinch. She realized that Marcus's power relied on fear, and without fear, he was just a man, flawed, exposed, and accountable. Kenya opened the folder, placing evidence on the table: screenshots of messages, recordings of threats, timestamps of calls, all neatly organized. "We have evidence," Kenya said, her voice steady, "and if anything escalates, authorities will be involved immediately." Marcus's expression shifted from confident to nervous. He realized this wasn't a casual talk anymore. He was being confronted with his own actions. The cafe staff watched from a distance, sensing tension but unaware of the specifics. Marcus attempted to regain composure, suggesting they talk it out somewhere private. Kenya shook her head. "No private discussions. Everything here is public, documented, and accountable." The conversation lasted only a few tense minutes, but it was enough. Marcus left subdued and cautious. He knew Kenya and Keisha were serious. Outside, Keisha let out a deep breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Thank you," she whispered. "I finally feel safe." Kenya smiled, but her mind was already moving ahead. This was only the first confrontation. Marcus might try again, but this time they were prepared. Every move he made would be countered with strategy, evidence, and resolve. For the first time, Keisha realized that standing up didn't make her vulnerable, it made her strong. And Kenya knew that protecting someone didn't mean fighting recklessly, it meant planning, documenting, and empowering. The sisters left the cafe together, a sense of cautious victory surrounding them. Outside, the city bustled unaware, but inside, a storm had been faced and survived. Marcus left the cafe subdued, but frustration simmered beneath the surface. For the first time, someone had confronted him and made him feel powerless. And that feeling of being watched, of having his actions documented, gnawed at him relentlessly. He spent the night pacing his apartment, replaying every interaction, every piece of evidence Kenya and Keisha had displayed. Marcus realized that fear alone would no longer control Keisha. He needed a plan, something clever, something that could regain his advantage. Meanwhile, Keisha returned home with Kenya. The sisters spent hours discussing security measures, installing cameras, updating passwords, and alerting trusted friends. Every precaution was a shield, every strategy a weapon of empowerment. Yet Marcus's mind worked differently. He wasn't thinking about reconciliation, he was thinking about escalation. His goal was to unsettle Keisha, to make her second-guess her newfound strength. The next day, Keisha began noticing unusual activity. Messages that seemed innocent at first, questions about her routine, comments about places she frequently visited, felt like subtle intimidation. She confided in Kenya immediately. "It's him," Kenya said, examining the messages. "Marcus is trying to test boundaries, see how far he can push you." The sisters knew they had to act carefully. Any rash reaction could give Marcus more power. Kenya suggested documenting everything and avoiding direct engagement unless necessary. That evening, Marcus tried a direct approach. He appeared near Keisha's gym, pretending to be a passerby. But Keisha stayed calm, walked away, and called Kenya. Within minutes, they had a plan: evidence, witness accounts, and a safe path home. This was a new reality. The confrontation wasn't over, it was evolving. But with each encounter, Keisha's confidence grew. She realized that strength wasn't about never feeling fear, it was about taking action despite it. By the end of the week, Marcus had tried subtle tactics multiple times, but Kenya and Keisha were always prepared. And Marcus began to understand something he had never considered before. Control is only an illusion when the other person refuses to be manipulated. Keisha learned a vital lesson. Her life wasn't defined by Marcus's actions, it was defined by how she responded. And with Kenya by her side, she knew she could face any challenge. Marcus grew increasingly reckless. His subtle tactics weren't working anymore, and frustration began clouding his judgment. He thought he could manipulate Keisha with intimidation, but every attempt only strengthened her resolve. Keisha, on the other hand, had begun to take the initiative. She realized that avoiding Marcus entirely wasn't enough. She needed to anticipate his moves and stay one step ahead. With Kenya's help, Keisha developed a plan. They decided to document Marcus's patterns, track his behaviors discreetly, and prepare responses that would neutralize any intimidation attempt. Every message, every shadowed movement, and every suspicious activity was logged meticulously. One afternoon, while Marcus tried to intercept Keisha at a local park, he was caught on camera from multiple angles. Keisha remained calm, aware of every exit and entry point. The sisters had rehearsed this scenario countless times. Marcus didn't expect resistance, he expected panic, but Keisha's composed demeanor threw him off. His presence in the park felt exposed and futile. The power dynamic had shifted. That evening, Keisha reflected on the week's events. She understood that control wasn't about confrontation alone, it was about strategy. She had taken the fear that Marcus had instilled and transformed it into actionable intelligence. Meanwhile, Marcus grew increasingly desperate. His tactics were failing, his intimidation attempts futile. Keisha and Kenya were no longer reactive, they were proactive. The sisters began to share their insights with close friends, creating a small network of awareness. Marcus had underestimated Keisha's support system, and now he was facing a reality where every move was observed, documented, and countered. By the end of the week, the tables had truly turned. Marcus's psychological games were collapsing, and Keisha's confidence had reached a new level. She understood now that empowerment wasn't just about avoiding harm, it was about reclaiming control over one's life, regardless of who tried to dictate it. Marcus was growing impatient. Each failed attempt to intimidate Keisha added fuel to his anger. He believed that his charm and manipulation could eventually break her resolve, but he hadn't accounted for her growing confidence and strategy. Keisha, aware of his increasing aggression, decided it was time to take a decisive stand. She knew that hiding or reacting defensively wasn't enough. She needed to assert control in a way Marcus couldn't anticipate. She coordinated with Kenya to create a plan that combined surveillance, legal backup, and personal safety. They contacted trusted authorities, collected evidence of Marcus's harassment, and ensured every action was documented. The sisters were now not just defending, they were preparing to end the cycle of intimidation. One evening, Marcus approached Keisha under the guise of talking things through. He thought this casual confrontation would unsettle her. Instead, Keisha calmly guided the interaction into a controlled environment, subtly recording the conversation. Every word he spoke, every threatening insinuation was captured. The sisters had rehearsed this moment multiple times. Keisha's calm demeanor disarmed Marcus, who grew visibly agitated when he realized she wasn't intimidated. The power dynamics had shifted completely. After the encounter, Keisha reviewed the recordings with Kenya and selected the most critical parts. They had undeniable proof of Marcus's harassment. With this, they could finally involve legal authorities, ensuring that Marcus could no longer intimidate or manipulate anyone. Keisha felt a profound sense of empowerment. She realized that facing fear head-on, documenting it, and taking informed action was far more powerful than hiding or avoiding danger. By the end of the week, Marcus's attempts to control Keisha were effectively neutralized. Her confidence had grown exponentially, and she had reclaimed her life from someone who had tried to dominate it. The sisters celebrated quietly, knowing they had turned fear into action and weakness into strength. Marcus, frustrated and cornered, realized his manipulations had failed. Keisha's calm confidence and meticulous planning left him exposed. But rather than giving up, he decided on one last attempt to regain control. Late one evening, Marcus arrived at Keisha's apartment, attempting to provoke fear. He underestimated the preparation Keisha had done. This time, every possible scenario had been accounted for. Surveillance cameras, trusted neighbors alerted, and legal contacts on standby. Keisha greeted Marcus at the door, calm and unwavering. She maintained a controlled tone, letting him speak, but every word he uttered was being recorded. The sisters had positioned themselves strategically to ensure they could intervene instantly if needed. Marcus's frustration escalated as he realized Keisha was no longer intimidated. Every tactic he had previously used, charm, threats, intimidation, fell flat. Keisha listened calmly, occasionally redirecting the conversation to emphasize boundaries and document the harassment. By the end of the confrontation, Marcus's aggression was clearly documented. He left the apartment, knowing that the sisters had outsmarted him at every turn. Keisha immediately submitted the evidence to legal authorities, ensuring that Marcus would face consequences for his actions. The moment felt liberating. Keisha had transformed her fear into strategy, her vulnerability into empowerment. Marcus's attempts at control were over. She finally felt a sense of closure and safety that had been absent for too long. With Marcus's influence removed, Keisha could focus on her life, her dreams, and her independence. Kenya and Keisha celebrated quietly, aware that they had not only defended themselves, but had also taken control of their future. With Marcus finally gone and legal matters underway, Keisha felt a weight lifted off her shoulders. The constant anxiety and fear that had shadowed her life for months were now replaced with a cautious optimism. Keisha took time to reflect on everything she had endured. The emotional scars were still there, but she realized that each challenge had strengthened her resilience. She began journaling, noting down lessons learned, moments of courage, and strategies that had worked to protect herself. Kenya became her unwavering support. Together, they started planning new routines, small celebrations, and even long-term goals they had postponed because of Marcus's control. Keisha rediscovered simple joys: morning walks, coffee at her favorite cafe, and time with trusted friends who had stood by her. The sisters also invested time in personal growth. Keisha enrolled in a self-defense class, while Kenya focused on her professional development. Each step was a reaffirmation that they were reclaiming their lives. Word of Marcus's arrest and Keisha's courage spread among their close circle. Friends and neighbors admired their bravery and resilience. The sisters' story became an example of how careful planning, self-belief, and mutual support could overcome even the most manipulative and dangerous individuals. For Keisha, the biggest change was internal. She no longer felt like a victim. She was a strategist, a survivor, and someone capable of standing up against fear. Each day became a conscious choice to embrace life, seek joy, and protect her well-being. By the end of this chapter, Keisha and Kenya were not just safe, they were thriving. Their bond had strengthened, and their outlook on life had transformed from cautious to confident. The darkness Marcus brought into their lives no longer had power over them.